Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to our channel and thanks for logging on. Today we're discussing an upscale Portuguese in white gold. You can see and you can purchase this IWC Portuguese Tourbillon Mystere in 18 karat white gold, one of 250 made, on our website. Subscribe to our YouTube channel if you enjoy these videos, and please click on the card in the upper right hand corner of the screen at any time during this video to see our full sales listing for this white gold Portuguese complication with additional accessories included in the sale, high-resolution images for your desktop, and naturally complete pictures, prices, and accessories included with this watch when you purchase it. Now, the timepiece on my wrist represents one of the premier complications and premier Portuguese complications in the IWC catalog. Although the Portuguese gained its first minute repeater in the mid-1990s, the tourbillon didn't join the catalog until 2004, and this was the charter reference, the combination making up in refinement what it lacked in timeliness by combining IWC's automatic 7-day power reserve with a flying tourbillon architecture and dial-side finishing more commonly observed on movements. Now, the watch was made between approximately 2004 and 2009, with the white gold limited edition of 250 being built towards the tail end of that production run. The watch is large on the wrist, but that is the style with the Portuguese and has been since the first reference 325 of 1939. 44.2 millimeters across the round of the case, not including the crown. The watch isn't exceptionally thick, 14.4 millimeters, and you can see with a concave bezel, the watch will slide easily underneath a dress cuff or a tight sleeve. From lug to lug, it's full-sized but not gigantic. 52 millimeters from lug to lug. You'll also note how the lugs do turn down rather dramatically and wrap around the wrist rather than flare out. So if you're borderline to wear the watch, it's still going to appear proportional and nicely fitted. I would argue that borderline to wear the watch would be about 14.5 centimeters in wrist circumference. I do think you'll be able to pull it off, though stylish and secure. Now, you'll also note just how dramatically downturned those lugs are. They almost turn 90 degrees from the horizontal sweep of the case band, and there's no constraint in pulling the strap down around a smaller wrist. So again, sleight of wrist, take heart, this watch is for you. You can see it's a black matte finish, small-scale alligator leather strap with folded edges, a monotone stitch, a matching and very substantial white gold buckle. Now, this is something you do want, both for the security that prevents droppage while donning or removing at bedside, and for the fact that once on the wrist, like a sports watch with a heavy bracelet and clasp, a heavy precious metal complication is best counterweighted by a substantial precious metal clasp. So if you do want to wear the watch loose, it's not going to try to flip over on your wrist. It's going to stay planted like a sailboat's keel. That's the other role of the clasp. The case is surprisingly nuanced for a huge mass of precious metal. You can see there are a number of strong character lines formed by the polish of the case back and the bezel with the mid-case, contrast between the polished elements and the satin of the mid-case. You'll also note the integration of the lugs, fluid and seamless in the fashion of every Portuguese reference. One blends into the other. You'll even note that if you look at the lugs head-on, they have a little bit of tumble home, that is, they roll off to the sides, and you can get a better view of the concave bezel from this angle. You also note the difference between the satin finish on the flank of the case and the vertical satin finish, which contrasts with the horizontal. You can see how it's vertically finished between the lugs. Nuance, attention to detail, beauty in every respect, and that's before we even get to the dial. This is a very cool watch aesthetically because of the combination of grayscale tones, but there's also texture. The watch has a spectacular radially grained sunburst that emanates out from the hands at center. All of the numerals are applied and polished white gold to match the white gold hands, which are leaf style at center for hours and minutes, and then a lancet or a sort of dart style for constant seconds and the power reserve. You also note that the power reserve and constant seconds are slightly recessed to add another focal plane to the dial, and then at 12 o'clock there is a Côte de Genève that surrounds the flying tourbillon. You can see there's a separate plate finished with vertical Côte de Genève or Geneva waves. Again, this is the kind of thing you sort of get used to seeing on a movement. It's quite novel to see it on the dial side. You'll also note how the edge of this plate has been beautifully polished. It has a mirrored rounded anglage. Now, the dial side of the tourbillon cage is very well finished. It's what you're going to see for the most part. It's what your friends are going to see. It's beautifully executed. It is a flying tourbillon because, as you can see, there is no bridge suspending it or anchored in place on the front. Unanchored untouched, completely open for your observation. That's a flying tourbillon. Like I said, IWC was a little bit late to the tourbillon party with the Portuguese line, so a flying tourbillon it was for the debut reference. Now, if you could look a little bit closer, you'd also see a beautiful blued Breguet overcoil hairspring, which combines with the tourbillon to help even out the effect of gravity on the timing precision of the watch. And one might even say in the wristwatch era, the overcoil has more of an effect on canceling out gravity than the tourbillon itself, which nevertheless remains quite beautiful. Beating away at 19,800 vibrations per hour, it's a quirky beat rate that you don't see too often. It's characteristic today of, for instance, the Audemars Piguet 2120 or the Vacheron 1120 based on the same JLC Bausch. You would see it on late 60s to late 70s Rolex automatics and the old IWC caliber 85s, but it's alive and ticking quite literally in this Portuguese Tourbillon Mystere. Now, you'll note on the back that the tourbillon actually pivots on bearings, and the reverse side of the case is more of a caliber 50,000 series than you might expect, which means it's a 38.2mm automatic, one of the world's absolute largest automatics, a signature of a true manufacturer, the ability to build a movement sized and shaped for a case. Here you can see that is the case in full, quite literally a giant automatic winder with an inset yellow gold medallion. You can see the Peloton winding system with its ceramic pawls, an upgrade actually that was made over time, and the pawl wheel bidirectional winding. It doesn't have rotor wobble, and it's quite a quiet system. It's also quite shock resistant, so tougher than most, this IWC tourbillon. 7 days of power reserve, and of course the entire architecture designed and executed by IWC, but it's not a water watch. 3 ATM water resistance is fairly standard, par for the course in the world of dress watches. Now, of course, you can wind the watch manually if you prefer to watch the sweep of that power reserve scale across the dial at 430. This is a watch that has immense visual impact, both because it's physically large and because of the striking tandem of the silver and the gray sunburst elements on the dial, and that's before we even get to the tourbillon itself. This is a true statement watch in every respect. Now, one could also say the likes of the Audemars Piguet Royal Oak Offshore and the Hublot Big Bang are statement watches, but I would like to think this makes a somewhat more refined statement. Yes, you can be fabulous, but you can also be fine. You can see and you can own this one on our website.